Our plan to rebuild living standards starts with cost of living help.
Both major parties sell their economic messages.
It's an important budget.
The economic scene is much weaker now than it was 3 years ago.
You can't tell me here and our viewers how much it's actually going to cost to build these nuclear power plants.
The shift to net zero isn't just a challenge, it's an opportunity.
Energy is the backbone of the economy.
Gas is going to be an important part of our transition into renewables.
Net zero is the bare minimum. We intend to implement the policy we took to people.
The defence of our nation is crucial, it's critical, and it's one of the most important periods that we are now facing as a country.
Welcome to our election headquarters. This is Election Night Live.
Anthony Albanese will again be Prime Minister of Australia.
We will make our way forward with no one held back and no one left behind.
We know there's more work to do to make our budgets more sustainable, and we think the best way to work out what to do next is to do that together, and that's what the Economic Reform Roundtable is all about.
Please welcome the host of Australia's Economic Outlook 2025, political reporter and host of AM Agenda, Sky News Australia's Laura Jays.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 4th Annual Australia's Economic Outlook Business Luncheon, of course presented by Sky News and The Australian. My name is Laura Jays. I'm the host of AM Agenda, and it is my absolute pleasure to be back among you today. Even flew home from Washington for it, so here we are. Now, before we get underway, please welcome to the stage Australian Indigenous Education Foundation Scholarship student. His name is Adam Veligold, and he has our acknowledgement to country. Before he comes to the stage, just a little bit about Adam. He is a proud Gomeroi student, and he's in Year 12 at the Armidale High School. He's on an AIEF scholarship. Adam's favourite subject is business studies, and after completing school, he's looking forward to going to university. Outside of the classroom, which is pretty important as well, I would say, Adam, he's an active participant in school life. He plays rugby and represents his school in basketball. And that is one of the many reasons Sky and The Australian are proud partners of the AIEF. Please welcome Adam to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land which we gather here today. The Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here present today. My name is Adam Veligold. I'm a proud Gomeroi man and an AIEF Year 12 scholarship student studying at the Armidale School. I want to thank Sky News and The Australian for the opportunity to speak with you today, and also Future Women for their support of the Australian Indigenous Education Foundation. My AIEF scholarship has provided me with the opportunity to attend the Armidale School since I was in Year 7. My family and I were unsure at the beginning whether or not I should go to school in Armidale or stay at school in Canada, as I'd only be able to see my parents either on school holidays or even some weekends. But we couldn't turn down this amazing opportunity. Over the years at the Armidale School, I've developed from a little Indigenous kid from a small country town to a young man who stands here today, applying to universities that I could never dreamed of attending. All this would never have happened without the support of the AIEF and my family. I'm the male Indigenous leader of my school, and I take pride in mentoring and helping younger Indigenous students thrive and develop in their newfound boarding life. I'm also a captain of basketball, and I play 5'8" in our rugby team, which helps the younger students too. With finishing my HSC just right around the corner, I'm looking to be only the second boy in my Indigenous family to complete high school in at least the past 3 generations. And if I succeed in my applications, I'll be the first boy ever to attend university to continue my passion for finance. I'm also exploring opportunities I could pursue that the AIEF could help me with, such as internships with HSBC, which will provide me with connections that will help me throughout my life. Regardless of what I end up doing after I finish graduation, I know that I'll be in a better position than what I would be doing if the AIF hadn't provided me the opportunity to attend the Army School and pursue my education there. I am forever grateful for the opportunities that have come my way because I am a part of the AIF community. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. We really appreciate you being here with us today and for your beautiful acknowledgement of country. Of course, taking time out as well. I'm sure you've got a very busy schedule. Now, I am thrilled to be back here hosting today's proceedings, as I mentioned before, and Crown Sydney, here at Crown Sydney, and one of our massive sponsors for this event. We've been here 4 years running, and it's one of the best rooms in Sydney, absolutely. So a big thank you to Crown Resorts, Uber Eats, Technology One. They are our sponsors here for today's event. And just a small reminder, we are broadcasting today's event. It's being broadcast live on Sky News. It is available to stream on skynews.com.au, and just in case you want to get home and relive it all again. Now, we are in store for a wonderful afternoon of networking and discussions. We'll be hearing from the Prime Minister very shortly. I'm sure he enjoyed very much reliving the highlights from the last election. And he did say at the last event last year that he would be here this time as well. I think he was very confident. So, yeah, that was a very well predicted outcome from him. He also said this morning in the Australian newspaper that he wants to unleash the private sector, so we can't wait to hear his plans for that, and I'm sure you can't either. We're also going to hear from business leaders, the best business minds in the country. So let's get started. I'd first like to welcome to the stage Sky News Australia CEO Paul Whittaker.
Thank you very much, Laura, for that. And thank you to Adam Veligold. What an impressive young man. Thank you, Adam, for providing today's acknowledgement of country and for your moving and heartfelt words. Sky News and the Australian are proud to be long-standing sponsors of the Australian Indigenous Education Foundation, which has brought lasting change to more than 1,000 students nationwide, just like Adam, through its boarding school scholarship program. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank you for joining us today for the 4th Annual Australia's Economic Outlook event. Together with the Australian's Editor-in-Chief, Michelle Gunn, we are delighted to welcome you all to Crown Sydney for an afternoon of important discussion on the challenges and opportunities facing the national economy. Welcome also on behalf of our News Corp colleagues here today, the Chair of Sky News Australia, Siobhan McKenna, the Executive Chairman of News Corp Australasia, Michael Miller, the Chief Executive Officer of HarperCollins Australia and New Zealand, Jim Demetrio, along with other senior executives and editors. At this moment, the diverging objectives of national self-interest and globalisation have never been more apparent. We are seeing this play out through the conflict in the Middle East, where recent geopolitical events have overshadowed all else and ignited a firestorm of global economic volatility. These events have only served to expose our nation's vulnerabilities. So dependent are we on international markets for security and prosperity. And as we brace for the impact of next week's long-awaited US tariff review on our global export market, it is clear we are in turbulent times where anything can happen. Indeed, our closest ally, the United States, has forged a path of disruption for adversaries and allies alike. President Trump's protectionist policies have turned the global economy on its head as his administration attempts to right-size what it sees as a shared accountability across allied nations. Last week, NATO's member states agreed to US requests to raise defence and related infrastructure spending to 5% of GDP in the next 10 years. For now, the Australian government has resisted US requests to lift defence spending to 3.5% of GDP, up from a projected 2.3% by 2033. Meanwhile, Trump's much-hyped Big Beautiful Bill, a sweeping domestic tax and spending package that passed the Congress overnight, also threatened to have major implications on foreign investment in the United States. The controversial Section 899 of the bill proposed retaliatory or revenge taxes on countries they deemed were imposing unfair levies on US corporations. The proposed bill also threatened the $4.2 trillion of Australian super retirement funds that are invested in the United States. But it seems Australian superannuation investors may have been given a welcome reprieve, at least for now. Just a few short days before the bill was passed in the US Senate this week, the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced that Washington would move to drop the controversial revenge tax on foreign capital following a new tax agreement with G7 nations. The Chief Executive Officer of AustralianSuper, here with us today, Paul Schroeder, whose fund has a major office in the US, will be interviewed later by Sky News business editor Ross Greenwood. And I'm sure he'll have plenty to say on this issue and if we are really out of the woods. It's also unclear how this will play out for Labor's media bargaining code, forcing US tech giants to pay for local news, given Canada's sudden reversal this week of a similar tax on the tech giants, following intense pressure from the US administration. Amid this rapidly changing global trade environment, it is critical that our government strikes the right balance of strong international relations while promoting our national self-interests to ensure we are on the right path to economic prosperity. The Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, has admitted that we need drastic economic reform to reel in an unsustainable federal budget. We are facing record national debt amid increased spending on defence, health and social programs such as the ballooning National Disability Insurance Scheme. The gross debt of federal, state and territory governments is expected to rise to more than $2 trillion over the next few years. This is all playing out as productivity stalls to a 60-year low. But the government, however, are working on solutions. In August, it will hold a much welcome productivity roundtable examining ways to increase economic growth, including a potential overhaul of the tax system. And the Prime Minister has obviously referred to that and will refer to that today. And while there are significant economic challenges facing Australia, following an historic second-term win by the Albanese government that secured Labor a record number of seats in the Parliament, there are many reasons to be optimistic. The unemployment rate is still at a near historic low of 4.1%. Inflation finally appears under control. There have been 2 interest rate cuts this year, with more predicted, helping to ease the cost of living pressures. And even though our economic growth has slowed, on an annual basis, Australia's growth will slightly surpass the US and other major economies such as the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany and Japan. Today we have a distinguished group of business and political leaders with us who will explore these challenges and the opportunities. I'm pleased to welcome our special guest, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia, who, as Laura referred to, returns for the 3rd consecutive year to deliver the keynote address at this event. The Prime Minister will outline his immediate priorities and long-term economic strategies to ensure a thriving future for the nation. I'd also like to formally welcome the CEO of AustralianSuper, Paul Schroeder. As I mentioned earlier, Paul leads the nation's largest superannuation fund, managing $365 billion in assets for more than 3.5 million members. It is the only super fund with a dedicated US office with more than 60 investment managers and analysts. Paul was recently part of a high-powered delegation led by the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, and Australia's ambassador to the US, Kevin Rudd, that presented to the US Treasury Secretary in Washington, highlighting, among other things, that Australia has the 4th largest pool of retirement funds in the world. Also joining us today is an esteemed panel of business leaders. The Chief Executive Officer of Crown Resorts, David Sy, who joined Australia's largest entertainment group, first as the CEO of Crown Perth, before his appointment as the Group CEO of the company in August of last year. The Executive Chair and Director of Myer is with us today, Olivia Worth. Formerly the CEO of Qantas Loyalty, Olivia is responsible for driving the national retailer's next phase of strategic growth. The Managing Director of Uber Eats, Ed Kitchen, is with us today, who leads the fast-growth business of Uber's delivery platform in Australia and New Zealand. Also joining us today are four of Australia's leading journalists. The rather skylag Laura Jays, the Sky News AM agenda host at our MC for today, who arrived at 7:30 this morning from Washington, DC. Thanks for being here, Laura. Sky News political editor Andrew Clennell, whose birthday it is today. What else would you rather be doing on your birthday, Andrew? Also the American Independence Day. The Australian's Associate Editor Eric Johnston and Sky News' Business Editor Ross Greenwood. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge and thank our event partners, Crown, Uber and Technology One, for their ongoing support. Today's event is being broadcast live on Sky News, and a highlights program will be available to stream via the Sky News app. Information on our app is available in some booklets on your table. Thank you, everybody, and I hope that you enjoy today's proceedings.
Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your entree. Australia's economic outlook will recommence soon.
Australian Indigenous Education Foundation, and that was wonderful to have you here with us today. Can I join in welcoming the many leaders from across the business community here today and thank Sky and the Australian for hosting us here. Every morning when we look at the Oz or turn on Sky News, we're reminded that this is a time of significant global uncertainty. Conflict in the Middle East and Europe, upheaval in the world economy, strategic competition in our region, technology rewriting the way that we live and the way that we work. Yet the defining test Australia faces in this decade is not whether we can manage this period of uncertainty. It's whether we can work together to seize this moment of opportunity to build a more secure and prosperous future the Australian way, with no one held back and no one left behind. In 2025, there is every reason to be optimistic about Australia's economic outlook. Think about where we are, the fastest growing region of the world in human history. Think about what we have, the resources and critical minerals every nation needs to power its future growth and meet its net zero commitments. More than that, the space for refining and processing, the energy to power a new generation of manufacturing and industry, a world-class university and TAFE sector to train and prepare our future workforce, a superannuation system that facilitates nation building and makes us a significant global investor, and a multicultural society that, of course, gives us a family connection to every nation on earth. Then consider what we can do if we work together to make the most of these incredible advantages. If we invest in the potential and capacity of our people, if we make ourselves a clean energy superpower, an exporter of energy and a manufacturer of generation and storage technology, a standout destination for international investment from data centres to green metals, and a partner and provider of choice to the Indo-Pacific in everything from food and fibre to education and services. All of this adds up to a time of profound opportunity for Australia, but none of it will come knocking on our door or be gifted to us by anyone else. We have to back ourselves to go out and seize it. This means doing more with our traditional economic strengths and building beyond them. That's the strategic focus of our government's plan for a future made in Australia, and our support for Buying Australian, from making it easier for families doing their weekly shop to choose Australian-made products, to ensuring that government procurement backs local business. We want to make more things here in a more competitive and diversified economy, boosting our resilience and our self-reliance so we are not always the last link in the global supply chain. This is a safeguard against future global volatility, and it is an investment in our regional engagement, because adding value here means we bring more value to our trade partnerships. This is crucial, especially at a time when free and fair trade is under challenge. Making more things in Australia doesn't mean doing less with the Indo-Pacific. It means creating opportunities to do more. It was no accident that my first bilateral visit of this term was to Indonesia. Indonesia was where we launched Nicholas Moore's Invested, our strategy to drive a new generation of business engagement right across Southeast Asia, the fourth largest economy in the world by 2040. So many of you in this room are helping bring that plan to life with your direct links to these growing economies, just as you've played a key part in our government's patient, deliberate and calibrated stabilisation of the relationship with China, clearing away over $20 billion in trade impediments, and now seeing our farmers, growers and producers set new records for their exports. All this underlines the fact that our government's support for making things here in Australia is not driven by nostalgia for an old economic model. It is shaped by our recognition of the new model that is emerging. The world is moving beyond the old equation which held that high-wage, open economies like Australia could not sustain manufacturing locally because we could not compete on price internationally. Instead, in the years ahead, comparative advantage in manufacturing will not be defined by minimising the cost of labour. It will be secured by the most productive use of technology, by cutting transport costs and by cheaper, cleaner energy. For Australia, the ability to co-locate extraction and refining and processing and manufacturing powered by renewables gives us an edge over so much of the world. Building these links in our national value chain also makes it easier for Australian research and innovation to be commercialised and developed here. And as a Labor government, we are determined to create the right framework and make the right investment in skills and training to ensure that artificial intelligence is a contributor, not a competitor, an enabler of secure and fulfilling jobs, not a threat to them. In all of this, our nation does not need to go looking overseas for an economic model to copy. There is nothing for us to gain from a race to the bottom on wages and conditions, or the economic self-harm of tariffs. We want to do this the Australian way, not talking Australia down, holding true to our values of fairness, aspiration and opportunity for all, investing in our people, their ability to adapt to new technology and to develop it, and drawing out the potential of our whole country. Because building a more diversified economy is how we create a more decentralised one, bringing new jobs and industries from remote communities to the regions and to growing suburbs, as well as in our capital cities. This is the model that we have the opportunity to build, an economy that's more resilient and more competitive, more dynamic and more productive. An Australia that is stronger and fairer, indeed stronger because we are fairer. But in order to bring people and business and civil society with us in the pursuit of that vision, to mobilise all the talent and resources of our nation to meet this moment, we have to deliver here and now, to prove the practical value of a reforming government, to demonstrate that people's democratic choice makes a positive difference. This means ensuring our economy is rewarding Australians for their hard work, nourishing their aspiration and providing the security that enables people to build a good life for themselves and for their families. This is why our government is focused on repaying the trust that Australians have placed in us by delivering the policies that people voted for on the 3rd of May. Stronger Medicare, cheaper medicines, building more homes, lower taxes and higher wages so Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn, and meaningful, lasting help with the cost of living. This Tuesday, the 1st of July, marked an important day of delivery. Another round of energy bill relief for every household and small business. The beginning of our Cheaper Home Batteries program, cutting 30% off the cost of installing a typical battery, permanently lowering power bills, but importantly as well, reducing peak demand across the network for everyone. From Tuesday, nearly 3 million Australians on the minimum wage or award wages received a real pay increase with a 3.5% bump in their pay. And the superannuation guarantee for all working Australians was raised to 12%. We're extending the instant asset write-off for small business. And our new $10,000 incentive payment for apprentices in construction is now open, helping to train more tradies so we can build more homes. And we've expanded government-paid parental leave by another 2 weeks. Up to 24 weeks, it goes to 26 weeks, the full 6 months next July. And importantly, for the first time ever, adding superannuation to it. So if you take time away from work to be with your new bub, you don't pay a penalty in retirement. These measures, together with cheaper childcare and historic pay rises for female-dominated industries like aged care and early education, reflect the fact that for our government, equality for women is not an add-on, it's not an afterthought, it is a central economic priority. And it is a source of pride that over the last 3 years, women's economic participation has reached record highs, The gender pay gap has fallen to record lows, and Australia has risen from being ranked 50th in the world for gender equality under the Morrison government to 13th, our best ever result. And whenever we talk about economic growth and productivity, we should all be mindful that equality for women is a powerful driver of both. Not just the right thing to do for a fairer society, the smart thing to do for a stronger economy. At this forum last year, I said our government's focus was winning the fight against inflation. Back then, many economists and our opponents said that the only way to bring inflation down was to drive unemployment up and to withdraw the cost of living support that we were providing for people under pressure. We held to our course, and last week proved how much progress Australia has made. Headline inflation down to 2.1%. In the Reserve Bank's target band 10 months in a row. There's already been 2 cuts to interest rates this year, and people will, of course, await a decision next Tuesday. Over the past 3 years, 1.1 million new jobs have been created, more than for any term of any government since Federation, and indeed the lowest average unemployment rate of any government in the last 50 years. Like every other advanced economy, Australia has had to deal with the worst global inflation since the 1980s and the biggest energy crisis since the 70s. But no other advanced economy has navigated this period like Australia. Working together, we have brought inflation down without sacrificing people's jobs, without cutting essential investments in skills, education, infrastructure and energy, and importantly, without cutting the services that Australians count on and deserve. With the worst of inflation behind us, our economy is indeed turning the corner. And our primary focus is shifting as a result, from bringing inflation down to getting growth and productivity up. The challenges we face in productivity have been more than a decade in the making. Turning things around will take time. Making lasting change always does. It will require cooperation as well, because this isn't a task that government can or should tackle alone. In a strong, dynamic and productive economy, government should be a driver of growth, but not the driver of growth. Facilitating private sector investment and job creation, not seeking to replace it. And that's where we look to the businesses represented in this room, from big employers to the millions of small businesses right around Australia. Our government wants you to be able to resume your rightful place as the primary source of growth in our economy. That is the essential purpose of the roundtable we're convening in Canberra in August. We are seeking a broad range of views so we can build broad agreement for action. Tax reform will be an important part of this conversation, but not the whole of it, because this is also an opportunity to build consensus around practical measures that can be implemented quickly, dealing with urgent challenges in a way that builds for the future. This is how we deliver and fulfil the agenda that we took to the Australian people, a plan defined by Australian values built on valuing every Australian. This includes making it easier for business to create jobs, start and finish projects, invest in new technology and build new facilities. Some of this involves government doing less, clearing away unnecessary or outdated regulation, eliminating frustrating overlap between local, state and federal laws. Yet value also lies in areas where government can do better. Better aligning our investments in TAFE and vocational education to deliver the skilled workforce that employers need, and making sure those vital skills can cross state borders in real time. Working to our ambitious goals in housing and renewables by getting projects approved and built faster, while maintaining our commitment to sustainability and safety. Continuing our reform of government services by setting new standards for access, quality and privacy. and ensuring that business has the workforce, the skills and the confidence to embrace new technology and embed its productivity benefits in their workplaces. We are convening this roundtable to help deliver on the commitments that Australians voted for. And because we recognise that the agenda we took to the election is the foundation of our mandate, not the limit of our responsibilities or our vision, every government should be in the ideas business, and no government should imagine it has a monopoly on good ideas. Whether or not you're a formal participant at the roundtable, we want you involved in the conversation. I know that the media can play a role in that. More importantly, we want you to help drive the progress that comes from it and to share in the benefits. And that's the point I'll conclude on. The way that all of us, politicians, media, business, civil society, participate in this conversation matters. It really does. Because very often the public debate about change in our economy is conducted only in terms of dire warnings about what the consequences for Australia will be if we get it wrong. In order to build the broadest possible support for substantive economic reform, we should focus on what we can achieve by getting it right, by working together to anticipate change and shape it in our national interest, by empowering people and workforces and communities with a sense of choice and agency, creating the fundamental security here and now that enables people to plan and save and build for their future, and demonstrating that we're determined for new technologies and new industries and new ways of doing business to keep faith with Australia's enduring values, to serve that oldest and deepest of Australian aspirations, the determination to pass on a better life and greater opportunity to your children. These are uncertain times, and as ever, much of that uncertainty is dictated by events overseas. Now, we can't determine the challenges that will confront us, but we can decide how we respond. Let us continue to invest in our people, back our businesses, and importantly, back ourselves. Be proud of what we have done so that we seize and share the opportunities ahead in the Australian way. Thanks very much.
Now, joining the Honourable Anthony Albanese MP, Prime Minister of Australia, political editor, Sky News Australia, Andrew Clennell.
Thank you.
Got your water, you ready?
Ready to go.
Thanks for joining us once again. I know you're sick of questions about Donald Trump, so I thought I'd start with that.
I've got practice at seamlessly segueing into...
Let's see what segues. I'm worried about your segues today. Are you more confident after Penny Wong's meeting with Marco Rubio you'll get this one-on-one meeting? And perhaps more importantly, even if you did, does it make a difference on things like tariffs and AUKUS?
Well, of course we will have meetings. There'll be a range of meetings between now and the end of the year with President Trump. Where all members of various forums, of course, Australia and the United States, so that will occur. But I'm confident as well that we will be constructive. But we know that no country has a better tariff, if you like, level than 10%. Now, we'll continue to put our case as we do, as I did with Secretary Bessent and Jamieson Greer and others on the sidelines of the G7 in Canada. Penny Wong was able to have a really constructive meeting with Marco Rubio as part of the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting this week. We continue to be engaged with our American friends, but they have a different position on tariffs. I have said that's an act of economic self-harm. I stick to that. I have a different view about the economy and about trade. And the concern for Australia isn't, if you look at what the impact has been so far, our beef exports are up. Our exports in a range of other products are up as well. Lamb's down a little bit. Steel and aluminium have been impacted, but not hugely. We are in a position where, you know, on July 9, that won't really have an impact on us because that's about other countries who have higher rates overnight.
We won't get a letter on July 9? We won't get a determination?
Well, we're on 10%.
That's what we're going to stay on after next week?
Well, I assume that will be the case. The United States...
What about the steel? Do we see any...
No, well, we will continue to put our case. But bear in mind that during the first Trump administration, it took some period of time for change to occur then as well. We'll continue to put forward our argument. There aren't new steel plants have appeared since either January 20 or April. All that's happening is that the purchases of Australian products and indeed products from around the world are more expensive for the American purchasers of those products.
But you have this conversation with Trump where he says, and he comes out later and says, I'll give great consideration to a change on steel, and then they don't deliver it. Is Peter Navarro the problem there, do you think?
Oh, I'm not going to get into the personalities, but...
you must have been disappointed when he didn't.
Well, we did have a constructive discussion, but President Trump, of course, made a decision that's consistent with his public comments. You know, when you
Except for that one.
No, well, when you're negotiating with someone, he did say that, but he has also said that there's no more beautiful word in the English language than tariff. Now, we have a different view. That wouldn't even be not in my to quote top 10 lists of all the thing at the moment in the odds this morning. That wouldn't be in my top million of words.
Could he pull the rug on AUKUS, or could he charge us more for AUKUS, or could he say you'll get less subs than the deal says?
Look, AUKUS is a good deal for Australia and it's a good deal for the United States. We are contributing to the industrial capacity in the United States right now. We need to, I think, be really proud of ourselves. It's one of the themes I hope came through in the speech there. I'll be speaking about our contribution. When it comes to defence and national security, we're not people who don't pay our way.
But do you fear he could pull the rug on it?
Well, I think that President Trump will know everything that he has said. He said nothing negative about AUKUS, nor have other people, including Marco Rubio, this week.
All right, so we're at the G7, I'm there with you, and you do a press conference where you're talking about what you're going to say to Donald Trump, you're about to meet him, you've consulted Greg Norman. Then half an hour later we get a tweet from Caroline Levitt saying Donald Trump is leaving the G7 after dinner. So your officials aren't told, you're not told. Well, you're told by Twitter. And after that...
I had you there to tell me.
Well, I did tell one of the departmental staff. I'll never forget the look on his face. Anyway, look, Trump then has a telephone conversation with Narendra Modi. He has one with the Mexican president. He invites Modi to the White House. We're right there. Is there something wrong here? Where's your phone call from Donald Trump in that service?
I've had three.
Yeah,
I've had three.
But is it just courteous of him not to call you then?
I'm not worried by someone making an understandable decision, which he did, to return to Washington. And one of the things that we've got to do, Andrew, and if you compare it with some media overseas, is we've got to stop talking Australia down and look for, this is a decision by the United States. The Australian government haven't made a decision about tariffs. We're not imposing any, we're not replicating. You know, we speak about reciprocal tariffs. We're not making a difference there either. And the relationship between Australia and US officials, we have people, when it comes to AUKUS, there's over 60 people currently in Hawaii working at working essentially through our naval personnel getting those skills. We have people in the United States. I've been on the Hawaii sub when it was in Western Australia. There was an Australian submariner working on that. Like, we're getting on with things, and we need to, I think, talk Australia up.
All right, that's fair
about what what we contribute in defence and security, what we contribute in our region.
Understand, but
is pretty unique.
Let me put this to you. Is the problem Kevin Rudd? I mean, he basically called him a traitor to the West, a village idiot, the most destructive president in history. Dan Scavino, one of Trump's staffers, put on that hourglass. A Trump pollster, Brett Buchanan, tells Laura Jays on air the other day that the president doesn't like the ambassador.
A Trump pollster from the election before last and the one before that.
I think
so.
Yeah, but is there something to this? Is there fire where there's smoke?
No.
So the administration's told you they've got no problem with Kevin Rudd, despite what he said.
Yeah, it's been very positive, and he's had meetings. And when I went to the US, the connections that Kevin Rudd has, as much as people might be have had a view about Kevin over a period of time, no one could doubt his capacity, his hard work, his ability to work strongly. The discussions that I've had have been very positive, nothing but positive in comments that have been made to me.
So he's not a bar to any phone call, any meeting, anything?
No.
Okay.
No.
Let me move on to the productivity roundtable, the big theme of your speech then. Now,
and no American political person would talk down the US ambassador to Australia. I make that point.
What if a US ambassador had called you a bunch of nasty names? Would you be inclined to?
Well, JD Vance had some things to say too. He's now Vice President of the United States of America.
Okay. This productivity roundtable, you never promised this before the election. Did you intend before the election to call this, or is this because you've got this huge number of seats now? So you say, well, now I can actually do reform.
No, well, before the election, we had a pretty ambitious agenda that we put to the Australian people. It wasn't something we developed during the election campaign. It's consistent, what we said, with what the speech I gave here last year and the speech I gave the year before. We have a view going forward that we've been taking every opportunity to outline. Last year, of course, so the primary concern was about inflation, and the primary concern of punters, of voters, of listeners and viewers or readers was cost of living. Now, that's still front and centre. I've got to tell you, on July 1, the concern that Australians had wasn't over who met whom where. It's paid parental leave, it's their wages going up, it's the tax they pay, it's whether their kids will be able to afford a home. They're the issues that we want to concentrate on. And my government has been laser-like focused on that, and we were during the election campaign and the lead-up, and in discussions that we had, both on air and outside. I would have said that to you, and why I was confident about an outcome, because I thought that only one side of politics was talking about things that mattered to people. And so the agenda going forward on productivity, there's an opportunity early in a term to bring people together from business, civil society. We've invited the opposition to participate as well, and have a discussion about things that aren't immediate, aren't about the 24-hour media cycle, they're not about the next week or even the next year. It's how does Australia position ourselves for future growth, and part of that has to be productivity. And when you have productivity which is basically flatlined for decades, isn't something that's emerged just since we came to government. It's been there for a long time. We want to open up dialogue for discussion, just as in the first term we had a Jobs and Skills Summit that led to the creation of the Jobs and Skills body that makes those recommendations and involves the private sector. We want to have dialogue, and we think it's a useful time early in the term.
You mentioned tax reform in your speech.
Yeah.
Are you open to raising the GST and lowering income tax?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to avoid is just that question.
You brought it on the agenda, though.
No. What we're trying to do is to have an adult conversation. And what has occurred over a long period of time is that people, you know, is it on my agenda? No, it's not. Okay?
Would you consider it?
No. But one of the things we're trying to do is to not say we're going to have this forum and people are entitled to come along and have ideas, but at the very beginning we're going to do interviews between now and August where we get asked by you and others to rule things in or out.
I'm not asking you to rule it out.
Yes, you are.
I'm asking if you'll consider it.
Yes, you are. People are entitled to put forward whatever they want to put forward.
What's your instinct about it?
It's not well, you can ask it different ways, but it's the same question, Andrew. And it's the same headline that you're looking for. And what I want is a mature...
I'm actually curious, as is the audience, I'm sure, of what your view is about increasing the GST and lowering income tax.
Well, no, it's not something that we have given any consideration to. But if people want to put forward ideas, we're not saying these are the conditions, you know, you can put them up. We, of course, will take into account the response. I mean, I'm a supporter of progressive taxation. Consumption taxes, by definition, are regressive in their nature. So that's something that, you know, doesn't fit with the agenda. But people are entitled to put things up. And this will not succeed if we have the next month being asked day after day after day what are effectively, as much as you put it very politely and skillfully, essentially asking for, you know, headlines to be written of Labor open to considering XXX.
Let's see what else you
And then what happens on day 2 is we rule it out.
Would you like...
So if we want to go down that track, we can.
But let me just ask you two principles here.
Yep.
Would you like to see lower income tax in this country, including for the top rate?
I always want to see income taxes as low as possible and wages as high as possible.
Including the top marginal rate?
Well, we're the first government to reduce the top marginal rate. We increased that threshold.
Keating did.
No, in recent times. Paul Keating was last century. This century...
Showing my age.
This century, we are the first government to change the top rate in a long period of time.
Did you change it again?
The Conservatives were there for 10 years. They didn't do anything about it. We lifted it from 180 to 190 so that when we changed stage 3, something that was, you know, we didn't envisage, we would go to the... When we went to the 2022 election, we didn't envisage that we would change it. I was fair income about that. Circumstances, with the cost of living, with the pressures that we're on, with inflation, meant that I think it was a responsible thing to do. We did it. They said, our opponents said they would oppose it and we should go to an election on it before they voted for it. And now no one that I've seen comment for a long period of time says we did the wrong thing.
Would you like to see lower company tax in Australia?
I want to see taxes. Of course I want to see taxes as low as possible, consistent with providing appropriate services and consistent with the overall macroeconomic interests of the country being looked after. So I'm not going to play the what is effectively, you're inviting me to do, the sort of rule in, rule out game. You can look at our record of what we have done, which was when we made that stage 3 change. One of the things that was argued for was that we should not have that tax decrease at the top end and just put it back into revenue, put it back into consolidated revenue. What we did, there was $106 billion of tax cuts were envisaged under stage 3. Our changes were worth $107 billion, but they meant that people didn't get left behind because we made sure right through the thresholds. Sure. And at the last election, I remind you, there's only one political party that went to the election arguing for lower taxes, sure, and that was the one that I led.
All right. You know, you talk about tax reform. What about some spending reform? I mean, the NDIS is pushing past $50 billion. It's projected to cost $64 billion. It's the third highest cost in the budget. Are you happy with the situation where 11% of 6-year-olds and 15% of Australian 6-year-old boys are on the NDIS?
No, I'm not.
Is it time to take kids with mild autism off the NDIS?
No, I'm not. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is to make the system more sustainable. It had been allowed to just drift over the 3 terms of the former government. My government intervened, credit where credit's due. Bill Shorten and credit where credit's due. The opposition supported the reforms that we put in place.
Will you have another go at it?
We will always look for spending to produce better value, because if the NDIS, had we not done that reform, our concern is that the vision of the NDIS is a great one. It's one we should be really proud of as Australians, of looking after people so that they benefit, but importantly as well, the whole society benefits if people can fully participate, including the economy. And we need to make sure that it is made more sustainable. We are working through the reform issues as well with state and territory governments, because it certainly, the vision of the NDIS wasn't that those sort of numbers that you just quoted go on the system. And when you have well over 500,000 Australians on the NDIS, but you've got to be responsible about how you do it and work through with the sector, because it's very easy for vulnerable people to feel like their support is threatened. We don't want that. People who need the NDIS need to keep it, but also there were massive rorts in the system. That's the truth.
Let me ask, because this is one of the themes again of your speech about business taking over, where we've had a real kind of surge of government, state and federal spending, creating jobs. The AI group, Australian Institute Group, recently analysed data and found that in 2024 the Australian economy added 410,000 jobs, 148,000 were in the public sector. Another 209,000 were in what you could call the non-market sector, so health, education, things connected, things involving government funding. Only 53,000, or about 13%, were in the private market sector. This tells a tale of a bit of a sick economy in the private sector, doesn't it?
There's a range of different figures have been used from time to time, and in order to tell a story to back up something that people want to argue for. The truth is that overwhelmingly a majority of the jobs that were created in the last term were not government jobs. But it's true that there has been a growth in areas like the NDIS, as well as aged care. We've put a promise that we made in the 2022 election that I'm really proud of delivering, was putting nurses back into nursing homes. And now there is a nurse present 99% of the time in our aged care homes. Now, that's a good thing that we have done that. It's a good thing in terms of getting higher ratios of care to people to enjoy that dignity and respect in their later years.
But your IR reforms and your renewable energy target, when you talk about stripping away regulation, I guess they're examples of the hand of government making it harder for business. Would you concede?
No, I think that paying people fairly actually assists business. I think that the reforms that we've put in place there have been sensible reforms going forward. I'm proud of the fact that real wages have risen now 7 quarters in a row, and prior to us coming to office they were falling. One of the things, if you look at the United States and you look at what's happened to the political system there, the disruption that occurs, it's a very divided society. And if you look at areas of the Rust Belt states, as they're called, with the decline of manufacturing, a feeling like people don't have a stake in the system. One of the things that we have the opportunity to do in Australia, and what my government is laser-like focused on, is making sure that people don't feel like they're left behind, that they don't have that stake. That's why we need to make more things here. That's why blue-collar work matters. That's why my government intervenes from Whyalla to salmon to a range of areas as well. A Labor government will always support jobs and will support people having a stake in society, and we don't make apologies for that. We think that importantly can assist business rather than a sort of race to the bottom.
We're out of time, but allow me two more. Are you minded? Are you minded to make any changes to the superannuation tax proposal on accounts of more than $3 million? Are you minded to alter that at all? There have been a few other proposals around.
Well, proposals around, but the proposal that was put forward, we put forward in the last term, would affect just a very small number. 0.5%.
So you're keeping it on unrealised gains and the rest?
0.5% of people were impacted by that.
You're not minded to change it?
Well, we went to an election on it, and we have, as I said, half a percent of the population are impacted by it. The productivity roundtable, for example, I'll give you a bit of a preview. You know, I'll start off, give a spiel, if you like, an opening of what potentially people might want to discuss, but we won't say you can't get in the room if you're going to raise issues or you can't put forward ideas. It's the opposite, and it costs nothing. The worst that can happen is that people develop relationships a couple of days together. I'll host people at the lodge on one of the evenings as well, and so we've got that worked out. But we want people to genuinely have a stake. There's I think it was Confucius, someone will point it out, no doubt if it's wrong, who said, if you think you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. Now, I don't think I'm the smartest one in the room. In the country, I happen to have a responsibility as Prime Minister, and part of that is mobilising the capacity of people in this room and people who watch Sky and people who watch whatever and read whatever publication to say, okay, if you've got a good idea, put it forward, we'll give it consideration.
Great, not like Malcolm Turnbull then. All right, Anthony Albanese. Thank you, Prime Minister, and please thank the Prime Minister for his time.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you to the Prime Minister as well. I think we just saw a very determined Anthony Albanese wanting to build consensus, not ruling things out ahead of this productivity roundtable. But first government, first Prime Minister, I would say, in a long time, talking about serious tax reform, probably since Howard introduced the GST. So we look forward to what Anthony Albanese comes up with. We're going to let you eat your main meals now. So we'll be back in just a moment. See you soon.
Please welcome back to the stage, host of Australia's Economic Outlook, Laura Jays.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this afternoon. We're going to get into the business side of things now. We're going to hear from the economic drivers in the room, the people that create the jobs, create the wealth in this country, and that is, of course, all of you here. To make the introduction for our next panel, please join me in welcoming the Australian's Editor-in-Chief, Michelle Gunn, to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Laura, for that introduction. It's a pleasure to join you all for what has become a special event for us, a great partnership between Sky and the Australian, where we all come together once a year for, as you've just heard, 4 years in a row now, to focus on the economy. And specifically, in this next panel, to take the pulse of the consumer economy at such a critical time. We were honoured to have been joined by the Prime Minister today. I wanted to thank him very much on behalf of the Australian for being here and for recognising the importance, as he said, of engaging directly with business leaders and the media in forums like this one. His presence did send an important signal. After securing a resounding election victory, his government has been handed a mandate, obviously, to deliver meaningful reform. And as today's editorial in The Australian made clear, that reform must begin with a renewed focus on productivity, on the enterprise and the private sector. This is a moment to act decisively, to modernise the economy, to strip away layers of regulation and to restore private enterprise as the engine of national growth. The message from business is clear. What is needed now is not more government, but smarter government. A government that clears space rather than crowds it, that recognises that it is time for growth, intelligent capital allocation and risk-taking. We are at an inflection point, certainly. Confidence, both consumer and corporate, is shaped not just by interest rates or economic cycles, but by leadership, political leadership, business leadership. And at a time of growing global uncertainty, it is vital that government and business work together with clarity and courage to unlock growth, embrace emerging technologies, and ensure Australia remains competitive and resilient in what, as we've heard already today, is a rapidly evolving and challenging world. That's exactly the spirit in which today's discussion takes place. We're joined in the next, for the next panel session by David Sy, Chief Executive of Crown Resorts, a man at the centre of tourism and entertainment, by Ed Kitchen, Managing Director of Uber Eats ANZ, a man on the front line of convenience, technology and shifting consumer behaviour, and by Olivia Wirth, recently appointed Executive Chair of Myer, a woman at the forefront of retail, boldly reinventing department stores in the digital age. Olivia, we're delighted to have you with us. Your appointment comes at a time of real transition, not just for retail, of course, but across the broader economy. The Reserve Bank is widely expected, as discussed earlier, to deliver a third interest rate cut next week, easing pressure on households. But inflation is only part of the story. Demand remains fragile, global uncertainty looms, and Australian consumers, like the businesses that serve them, are still navigating rapid change. And I guess, Olivia, you're up against Temu, Amazon and Co. No pressure there. Big challenges. Crown is, of course, one of the country's high-profile hospitality and entertainment businesses. It speaks to the long tail of tourism, but also to renewal and reinvention, especially in sectors where regulation, community expectations and commercial transformation all intersect. David brings a global perspective on how casinos can rebuild trust and reset their licence to operate. Uber, meanwhile, has become a daily habit for millions of us, millions of Australians, and is a case study in how digital platforms are reshaping how we travel, how we eat, how we transact. It's also, of course, at the centre of policy debates, from transport to food delivery, employment law, urban planning, and so on. Its leadership in a sector that lives and breathes disruption will bring valuable insights this afternoon to a national conversation on how we enable growth, not work against it. These are exactly the type of businesses, innovative, adaptive, and deeply embedded in people's everyday lives, that benefit when government creates space for ambition. This afternoon we'll explore how the economy is tracking, what's driving consumer behaviour, and what kind of reform agenda might help unlock confidence and growth. Eric Johnston, the Australian's Associate Editor and a sharp interviewer, I have to say, will guide that conversation. At The Australian, we believe business journalism is public interest journalism. The contest of ideas does not, should not stop at politics and public policy. It extends into the boardroom, the markets, and the decisions that shape the way Australians live and work. Thank you for joining us and for being a part of a conversation that really does matter. With that, please welcome Eric Johnston and today's panel.
We need to lift the levels of economic growth.
Australia's slowing economy is encouraging people to find extra work outside of their full-time jobs.
We understand that an economy has to work for people, not people work for an economy.
Consumer spending habits, they're changing. It's having an impact on all retailers.
Given the fact that we're in a cost of living crisis, people do have a greater propensity to spend on entertainment.
Consumers are looking to spend on products and services that give them that sense of escape.
We want to boost that opportunity, boost tourism, boost our economy.
The global net zero transition will also reshape our revenue from resources.
This is a time where the way that we make change, the how, matters.
Wow. So no pressure today, straight up to the Prime Minister. Thank you, Michelle, for the kind introduction there. Look, we have this panel of business leaders, and it's a really great time to have Olivia, Ed and David with us today. The three of them are right at the front end of consumer sentiment in Australia. So they're right at the front line of how the economy is travelling. We all talk about it in a big picture way, but they really know. So there's going to be a couple of areas that we're going to be looking at today. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Prime Minister's speech with reform and what business wants. Technology is another area. But first, let's set the scene, and I'll throw to Olivia first. This is around the economy. So, Olivia, what are some of the trends that you're seeing? You're right at the front end, both online and in the store. Are people spending? Are people happy at the moment?
It's pretty tough out there at the moment, Eric, to be honest, and I know there's been a lot of discussion around the core indicators across the Australian economy improving, but from a consumer perspective, it's pretty tough and it's patchy, and we've seen that for some time. Discretionary income isn't where it has been in previously, and so what we're seeing is consumers are really focused on value. They're focused on promotion and they're responding to sales. So I think whilst there has been some talk around improvements across the board, I think the consumer is still doing it tough and it is patchy, and we have a while to go until we see some significant improvement there.
Is there, we're talking about interest rates next week. There's potentially another interest rate cut. Did you notice any change when the rates started coming down?
Well, I think that everything helps, we'll
Yep.
say that. And I think this year, when you think about the environment that consumers have been trading into, we've had an election. We always know that impacts on consumer confidence. We obviously have inflationary pressures as well. So I think what we'll see over time, we're hoping that improves. But at this stage, it's been too early to call to say that it's definitely swept through and seen a change. It's too early to call at this stage, Eric.
So look, over lunch, Ed of Uber Eats signed me up to the app. He talked me the way through it.
Only at lunch,
I was disappointed it took this long.
I've got to say, David's lunch was fantastic, though. So, but Ed, you're in a different market, but also retail facing. So, right with the consumer, you notice trends. Your business probably got the biggest free kick it ever got through the COVID lockdown. We all saw all the bikes all over the street, and we're all at home, stuck at home ordering. But where has that turned to now? Where are we up to at the moment in terms of consumer demand?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much for having me here today. It's a real privilege to be up here. I definitely agree with Olivia that it has been a real challenge for both businesses and consumers, and we have seen that, but I think probably what we have seen more so is the changing consumer expectations and what they are looking for. And as you said, COVID turbocharged the delivery sector 4 or 5 years ago, and I thought we had a big business in 2019. It turned out it got a lot bigger very quickly. And we've seen that those expectations have stuck. The behaviours that changed in 21 and 2022 have remained there, and they are remaining there for our core business in restaurant food, but extending into the broader economy and for retailers as well. And so we are working with a number of retailers in how do we help facilitate same-day and next-hour delivery for them. And so many people are probably surprised at the number of deliveries that Uber would fulfil through merchants' own channels. So, for example, when you're ordering with Coles and Woolworths online, there's a good chance we're helping to support that, as well as Pet Barn and JB Hi-Fi and a number of other retailers. And we're seeing that, merchants and businesses are having to meet customers where they are, and I think that's for us too. They're often meeting us in our app, but we want to be there to help facilitate when customers are transacting through merchants' own channels as well.
How does consumer optimism play into this? So consumer confidence. So State of Origin, New South Wales wins. Yeah. Does suddenly half of Sydney order more on the app, or Collingwood wins on the weekend?
Definitely. I mean, I think we and I was talking to Jim just before. We do see these seasonal peaks, and game days are huge for us. Friday night footy, winter is seasonally really strong for us. So we definitely see that.
So talking about sentiment, David, over to you. Your business is really driven by sentiment, tourism, leisure, entertainment. What are you seeing at the moment?
Yeah, I think the trends that we see in entertainment sometimes are slightly nuanced from retail goods in that, when there's cost of living pressures, discretionary spending becomes more discretionary. And what we usually see is that the premium experiences tend to hold up stronger than the more casual commodity type experiences. And we are seeing that in the trends that we're seeing in our own business as well. And I think part of it is, at the end of the day, we are a little bit more bullish that humans really are craving live entertainment, live experiences, social interaction. And I think a couple of things we've seen, particularly over the last few years, I think two things have changed with consumer preferences. The first is COVID. I think with a lot of people having a sudden shock to the system and lacking that experience, have come out of it craving great entertainment experiences that are worth the money more than ever. So we're seeing about a 37% increase in people who actually, since pre-COVID, people who are local who choose to do staycations. We're seeing that when there's big events in town, like in Melbourne, where there's Spring Racing Carnival or Grand Prix, you actually see tremendous demand and people willing to pay for it. You're seeing that in the concert industry with live music. Ticket prices for Taylor Swift, some of the record highs. But you have to provide that experience that's worth it. And I think the second thing we also seen more broadly is social media. And you would think the digital age, social media, you would think moves consumers away from live experiences, but I would argue actually quite the opposite, because people rarely post on social media them sitting on their couch watching TV. They're usually out with friends or making connections or at some sort of experience trying to make people jealous. So I do think that the ability to differentiate the experience and actually create more memories, and which is the business that we try to be in, things that are fun and memorable and that create human interaction. I think even if there is some economic softness, you'll see people being willing to pay for it, but it has to be worth it.
And you're driven, though, so tourism. Are you seeing a return of tourism, both international and local and domestic?
I think everyone sees the numbers. The international tourism still isn't where it used to be since pre-COVID. It certainly has been growing. I think the last number I saw about 8 to 9% year on year, but it still has a bit of way to go. We are definitely seeing continued softness on the international business versus where it was before. A lot of our business and our shift is to provide and cater to the local customer and the interstate customer. We're lucky to be large-scale integrated resorts, and our primary customer we know are people who live within driving distance, and we need to give them a reason to make that drive worth it.
Okay, so look, really the centrepiece of today, obviously apart from our panel, was the Prime Minister talking about economic reform and putting reform back to business. In fact, he opened the door up for business. He wants you. So while we have our business leaders here, so Olivia, I'll throw it to you, an opportunity to reform, what would be one big thing, do you think, that could get Australia moving?
Look, I think what I heard this afternoon from the Prime Minister was that no idea is off the table, which I think is really encouraging. So it's not necessarily a case that the government is setting a prescriptive order of what the discussion is going to be. So I think that is a great thing, that they're going to be open-minded to many items for discussion. That has to include everything from workforce reform to general issues around tax reform. So I think if it is going to be an open debate and discussion, and that the government is going to be open for all ideas, including from the business community but from other important drivers of the economy, I think that is probably what's required. There is a huge amount of change occurring, and I think it is important for Australian companies to be open for investment, but you can only do that if the government settings are right. So I think it's timely. And we'll wait and see what comes out the other side of his Productivity Commission. Just on investment, you're spending a lot of money. My group is spending a lot of money with the new warehouse in Melbourne, on the outskirts of Melbourne. New high-tech warehouse, big investment. Has there been hurdles to getting that investment ahead, or it was just a lot of hard work getting to where you are today? Oh, look, I think so. What we're talking about here is an automated warehouse, which is actually really common for many retailers, not only Australia but overseas. And you do that because it obviously improves the customer experience ultimately, particularly for those customers shopping online. It's an important investment. We've actually got 5 warehouses across Australia, so this is just one of them. And I think that this is where it is important for companies to have confidence that the economy is going to continue to grow and prosper, and we have consumers which are going to be able to have the money to spend so that we can make this investment, because this is significant for us, but ultimately it's going to deliver a better experience from our customers. We're always focused on, yes, it's an investment from an infrastructure perspective and it's important from technology, but ultimately it's going to deliver a better experience for the customer, because the competition for Myer and all retailers in Australia is strong, and it's not from competitors here in Australia alone, it's global now. So we need to make sure that our experience, including online, is a really slick one to make sure our customers choose us over others. Yep. And Ed, in terms of your area or expertise, in terms of what you'd suggest to the Prime Minister in terms of one big reform, one big hit for a reform, what would you be thinking? If I reflect on the Labor government's first term of government, we were very heavily involved in the gig economy reform, and for the avoidance of doubt, we are pro-reform and really wanted to see that. But I guess what we were advocating for was modern reform for a modern form of work, and making sure that we have the right safety nets in place, but we are increasing innovation and new technology and new ways of working. And so we think the government struck a pretty good balance there in the first term, and I guess thematically that's what we would like to see in the second term, is Australia is a better place because of safety nets, but not slowing new innovation and technology and new ways of working down. And then selfishly for Uber, as we think about policy, advocacy and reform, there's probably 2 things we'd love to see the government partner with us on. The first is autonomous vehicles. There's an explosion of autonomous tech and self-driving technology, particularly in the US, but also the Middle East and Europe. And we would love to work with the government to set the regulatory pathways in track to enable that here in Australia in the decades to come. And then the second is for Uber Eats, I guess we're on the front line for packaging, and we spend so much time with restaurants about how do they have more sustainable packaging options. And it's really hard. There's a myriad of different standards across the country. When you think about recycling infrastructure, it's different at a state level and a local council, and it's really complicated. And consumers also don't know what they need to do. And everyone wants to do the right thing, but it's hard. And so we think there's an opportunity there for us to do that better in Australia. Have you been in an autonomous vehicle? Yeah. I mean, it's like, if you ever think about your first Uber ride trip, you sort of have that magical experience. Mine had a driver, though. Yeah, it did have a driver, yeah. And I guess it's a similar sort of like fast-forward moment where you're like, wow, this works, and it's pretty seamless and amazing. And obviously, there's still a lot of work being done, but if I think about, I've been at Uber now for almost 9 years, and everyone's talked about autonomous being here next year, and it hasn't quite been there, but the technology is really here now, and I think in the next decade to come, we will see that play a bigger part in our cities. And David, in terms of your area, your thinking in terms of
travel, tourism, leisure. Is there any areas of friction you would like to see sort of eased away in terms of reform?
You know, I think you referenced it earlier. Tourism, while it's not our core focus, we think it's a tremendous opportunity, not only for our industry, but I think for the country. And even having moved to Australia 2.5 years ago, Australia is a tourist destination for so many people. I mean, most people, when I told them I was moving to Australia, said it's on their bucket list to visit Australia. But then they may not understand really what Australia represents. And having been here, it's a fantastic, beautiful country. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to actually drive more tourism to Australia, either just as a natural country destination, but also through the fantastic events that we have, whether it's Grand Prix or Spring Racing Carnival in Melbourne, all these other things, Australian Open. So I think that we would have loved to see an increase in investment, particularly in Tourism Australia in this year's budget. But I think that there's an opportunity because tourism, hospitality in many ways is an export. It happens within the country's borders, but it's an export. And I think being able to drive the brand of the country and driving more tourism and spending from overseas, we think is an opportunity. And will also help the hospitality industry in the country recover.
So by the sounds, it is still fairly fragmented. So you'd like to see more investment in, say, Brand Australia for tourism.
Yeah, and also more concerted efforts to actually drive tourism, corporate group business, et cetera, into the country.
Mm-hmm. Olivia, in terms of technology, that's another sort of big theme that's sort of exercising a lot of boardrooms at the moment. So your business, almost 20% of sales is online. Yeah. Your business of 4 billion sales last year. So that is quite significant. So just talk me through, you presented to investors just a few weeks ago in terms of your thinking around where technology is going, retail and the trends in technology. So if you could just sort of distill some of those sort of key points there.
Yeah, look, it's obviously a key role in all businesses, and retail isn't alone. And retail traditionally has been one of the slower, I guess, parts of the economy to get onto technological advancements. But for our business, we're thinking about it from the customer perspective. So how do we make that experience better? Myer has multiple competitors, and how do we use that for an advantage? Whether that's through our loyalty business, which is all through from a data perspective, whether that's simply in store. So how do we use technology now as a way not to replace our service, but to improve it from a customer perspective? Whether that's pushing you the right products, whether that's providing a more seamless checkout experience. So really working out how do we optimise that customer experience, and then it's all the stuff in the back end. Yep. We talked about the warehouse before, so how do we use technology to improve and optimise our supply chain, for example. But for us, it's really going to be at the forefront of personalisation. It's going to mean that we can continue to compete with our direct-to-customer competitors who are all online. And for us, we're thinking about when we enhance that in-store experience, when we invest in our stores, what role can technology play to help that customer come back in store, because that's where we're going to win. That's our unique selling point. And
in a way, technology is part of the productivity solution as well. So it allows your business to perform better, more efficiently, and better and a better outcome. You know, sales increase as well.
Absolutely, it absolutely has to be part of the productivity discussion. It is a significant investment, but it's also a piece for us around a competitive advantage. And if you think about like the data, for example, that we have within our loyalty business, we're really focusing on how do we not only protect that data, protect our customer, but how do we use technology as a way of better engaging our business. So it's absolutely end-to-end, and I think it'll be a theme for many retailers, not only in Australia but globally, around how do you use tech to improve that customer experience.
Will you be going to the August Summit or putting your hand up, sending a submission?
Oh, look, there are many. I've got a pretty busy day job. I'm very new in seat, so I'll be focusing on selling and making sure that Myer can come back to its prior glory. So I'll leave the policy discussions for others, I think.
Yeah. And just in terms, this is for Ed, in terms of scale of your business, so how many touch points with consumers a day would there be?
With consumers across our mobility, our rideshare business and our Uber Eats business here in Australia, we'd have 12 million annual customers, and so a very, very large customer base. The usage on our platforms differs, obviously. There might be some people who dip in out and they use it as a luxury, a treat on a Friday night once every couple of months. And then there is the more daily and very regular use case. And we're seeing that certainly through our restaurants as they move into newer use cases, but definitely as we've added grocery delivery to our platform. That's been a really big additional use case, and the ability to do your top-up shop very conveniently and have that delivered within an hour across the country is huge. And I think, look, I was fortunate enough to join Uber as we were launching here in Australia, and I think when I started in 2016, we partnered with about 300 or 400 restaurants. That would now be 60,000 restaurants and retailers across the country. And we are, I think we had a bit of a hard look at ourselves last year. We had a bias towards the urban core and the cities in which we began our expansion, and realised that we were probably still a little bit biased there. And thematically, from a consumer side, we've seen two trends evolve, and one is this huge urban sprawl of our big cities. And we realised that actually the experience and the selection on the outer ring of Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane was probably not as good as it would be here in the central CBD. And then the move of population into the regions has been really big, and 1 in 3 Australians now live in regional Australia. They have the same expectations of convenience that we do here, sitting here in Sydney today, and we set ourselves the target of launching 100 new cities and towns this year. We've been doing 15 a month since March, and I'm from Melbourne. I have a bunch of friends who are very happy that Castlemaine now has Uber Eats, and so that's been a trend that we've been phenomenally surprised at the amount of adoption and demand from restaurants, retailers and consumers in the regions as well. And so I think that's been a really key trend that we continue to see evolve.
What about a drone delivery?
Drone. We haven't had too much in drones. There's a lot of other innovations on our platform.
I might just, before I move over to David, Olivia, just back to you, just on that expectations. So it is these big US tech companies, the Ubers, the Amazons of the world and so on, have set expectations around customer delivery and so on. Your business, you have a very big online business, a really huge infrastructure in terms of online. Do you find that pressure? Are they leading the way, or do you have to meet their expectations? Or?
Yeah, consumer expectations are absolutely changing. Particularly, I think, as Ed said, around the expectations around how quickly I want my goods. Yep. So there's definitely that driving the expectations around. It's just now common. It's seen as a utility. I've seen it, I bought it, I want it. Why can't I have it now, right? So that's absolutely the case, and we can deliver on that in the cities. It's a bit more challenging in regional areas. But for us, it's balancing that online and in-store. Because particularly in regional communities, for us, whether that be in Mackay in far north Queensland, for example, Myer is 900 kilometres away from its closest competitor. It plays a really different role. So for us, it's balancing that online and in-store and making sure that you don't take your eye off that important in-store experience, which are really important for many communities, not only in cities, but particularly in suburban and regional areas. So yes, they're setting the benchmark pretty high and we've got to meet it, but we've also got to juggle this other piece, which is how do you deliver that experience in store, which is equally important for the customer of today.
So David, in terms of use tech in an incredible way, I imagine walking into this building, there's so much tech that we don't even think about what's going on. You might want to tell us, but or not. But in terms of the how is it that you're using it in terms of your business, and what edge will it give you?
I think the near-term opportunity for technology in our industry, I think, are two main areas in the near term. The first is, at the end of the day, we are a person-to-person business. We service people in person. That's why people come. They want that emotional experience, that interaction. But that gets really hard to do at scale. And what that usually results in is friction points where you have to wait in line. And the universal human truth, nobody likes waiting in line. No one likes waiting on hold on phone. So I think they implement technology to speed up transactional processes and reduce those friction and actually be able to service at scale is an obvious opportunity, which continued technology and even AI allows us to do more effectively. But I think and what that usually does is not about labor efficiency. It frees up team members to do what they do best that technology could probably never do in our lifetimes, which is to make you smile or make you laugh or create an emotion or create that memory, or create that human interaction of why people seek hospitality and entertainment. I think the second area that it does, which we very much are focused on, is particularly with AI, is the ability to really analyze and synthesize large amounts of data in a very quick, efficient way. And as you can imagine, our industry, we have the luxury of having lots of data that we can use, whether it's customer-related data, business-related data, et cetera, and be able to apply AI models to that to then generate value for the customer, whether it's personalization of experiences, whether it's in creating a responsible, safe gaming environment, whatever it might be, that's a tremendous opportunity as well, not only for us, but for many industries.
So, and I guess just to where we might sort of finish up on is probably where we started, and thinking again about the mood and what the Prime Minister was talking about. Olivia, I'll throw this one to you and also open up to the panel, but just in terms of confidence, the Australian consumer's been through a lot. We're seeing the interest rates really ratchet up. Okay, they're starting to come down, but now we're seeing a lot of international uncertainty, and even though these are big picture issues, does it play out on the shop floor for you at Myer? Does it play out online?
Absolutely does play out. It does play out, and you see it quite dramatically play out around what's happening globally. And there's no surprise to that, because consumers today are really connected to what's going on in the world, and it impacts on their certainty and how they think about their lives. So yes, you do see that play out, but you also see the consumer recover pretty quickly. So the news cycle day to day absolutely plays a role in consumer confidence, and you can see that because we monitor sales minute by minute, hour by hour, and you can definitely see a correlation to that, and it shouldn't be discounted. So global environment and stability are definitely a factor, and that's why having a narrative within the Australian economy about the future of Australia and where we're headed, where we're focused, and particularly government working together with business is an important one, because you've got to balance out some of the uncertainty that exists globally.
Yeah, and look, Ed, in terms of your workforce, I imagine you have a lot of very young, very well connected in terms of online connected workforce. What's their mood? Are they coming up with ideas, or do they see a vision for Australia as well?
Definitely, and I think we're fortunate. We do have a really young workforce as a young technology company, and I think I love the energy that comes through our teams and our workforce. And I know that AI is a real buzzword, but I think there has been a huge impetus on us as individuals to get on board and just start the journey of using these tools, because the technology is pretty astounding, and I'm definitely in beginner mode myself, but certainly using voice to text a lot, as well as some of the other tools that our teams are leveraging. And I think from Uber's perspective, we don't really see AI taking jobs, but the people who can leverage AI really effectively are the ones that are going to succeed. And so it's great to have our younger talent really pushing that.
And David, last word for you. Maybe this is a deeper discussion, but our cities, your sites are really connected to our cities. They're really integral part of it. Just in terms, could you just sort of give me a scorecard? Are the cities recovering? Do you feel that they're coming back? They're becoming more vibrant in terms of the way that you're seeing the energy through your sites?
Yeah, I've only seen it for the last 2.5 years so far, but I know the economy, the cities have gone through a lot, and we definitely are seeing a number of trends. But I think there's some green shoots. We are seeing traffic in the CBD starting to increase, particularly as people come back to work, particularly as people actually are going out seeking those experiences. But we kind of view it as we don't want to just be the receivers of traffic, right? We want to actually play a role, because our locations, we're fortunate, are so integrated with the cities that we operate in themselves. We want to help create reasons for the cities coming back to their vibrancy. And so we really believe there's an opportunity to do that, and we're starting to see more and more people start to return to the cities in that way.
Okay, look, that's all we've got time for today with this panel. I'd like to everyone to say thank you for this panel. Put your hands together and thanks for
Thanks so much, Eric. Thanks so much, Eric, and to our panel. Liv, I reckon the Prime Minister would love to see you there at the Productivity Summit in August, so don't give up on that one too quickly. It's so great to hear Ed and David talk about AI. That was something that was sorely lacking in terms of vision when it came to the election campaign. Bit worried about Ed talking about no drones, but happy with driverless cars. Got a few questions about that. We'll see if we can check on with him soon. Okay, we left the best to last now. My colleague, Ross Greenwood, business editor at Sky News. Please welcome him to the stage. He is in conversation with Paul Schroeder, the CEO of AustralianSuper. Ross, take it away.
It is lovely to be with you all this afternoon, but particularly with this man here. So Paul Schroeder is Chief Executive of AustralianSuper. Now, everything you heard today from the Prime Minister does not exist unless this man and his fund backs it. Right? That's the simple matter of it all. If there is no confidence in business to invest, he doesn't have confidence to invest in those businesses. Now, AustralianSuper, as you heard earlier from Paul, has the best part of 3.5 million members. That's the important part. It starts with the members, right? It has also some $365 billion worth of money in it. That is a pool of capital available to be invested to benefit the members. The average return after tax over the past 10 years is more than 8%. So think your way through that. So in other words, if you're a business and you wish to attract his capital, you've got to guarantee him after tax over the next 10 years an average return per annum of more than 8%. So that is the trick. Paul Schroeder, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Ross.
All right. Is the Prime Minister got a hope in hell of getting business to invest in this country?
Well, thanks, Ross, for setting that up. I'd just like to help with one other perspective too. There are 3.5 million members in the fund. Many of them will be in this room. 441 of them are called Tatiana, and their average balance is $53,000. So when you think about AustralianSuper as, I think June 30 is $380 billion, it's a very large pool of money, but don't ever forget it's on behalf of Tatiana, who's got $53,000.
Sure.
Or I met a guy called Percy last year, and he said, I know who you are. I'm 67 years old. I'm retiring in 3 weeks, and you've got all my money. Right? So when anybody's thinking about big picture numbers, which we're committed to helping, don't forget we have to get that return for Percy and Tatiana, or we fail.
Okay, so your absolute focus and emphasis is on that member.
Yeah.
Right? So the important aspect of this is that, so when the government turns up and says, we think you should invest in this renewable energy, we think you should invest in the digital economy, we think you should invest in these areas, isn't that against sometimes the very philosophy of trying to get the best return for Percy?
Yeah, well, what I really reject is, it seems to me that the solution to every problem is to put it in the national curriculum, refer it to the ACCC, or get Super to pay for it. I don't like any of those. But I thought the best thing that the Prime Minister said today was this incredible idea of how can we help you get on with it, right? It's this idea, when they called the productivity roundtable, which sounds like a great idea, but imagine if we went into companies that we're investing in and said, how are you making money in this business and what does your future look like? And they said, oh, we're just waiting for the government to change a few things. No chance. That's not how you make money. We've got to create value. We've got to get out of the way, employ people. Basically, all we ever do is say, has your business got a great idea? Have you got a great management? And is it the price, at this time, is this the right price to buy that business? Right?
Sure.
So you trust the people who run a good business. I thought the Prime Minister, I thought it was actually pretty pugnacious today, really, saying nothing's off the table, but work it out, make it happen. I thought that, like, the idea of wanting to be more competitive globally, building a bigger pie, being more productive, and then slicing up the pie much more intelligently, that's what I took from the discussion.
Okay, so my point to you is this. Your biggest fund, which is your balanced fund,
sure,
that's the one that most people are in, about 2/3 of the money, maybe more. Okay, it right now, a little while ago, had Australian shares 24.5%. Okay, international shares 33%. So that says there's not enough good ideas in Australia to attract your capital.
Well, no, it just says your first point. Where will we make people the most money? Risk adjusted, post-tax, post-fees. It's a diversified portfolio, right? That's essential. It's one of the only free kicks in investing, having a fully globally...
Okay, you're Australia's biggest investor with more money overseas than Australia.
Yeah.
Doesn't that mean that the Prime Minister has got to worry because there are not enough good ideas for a business such as yours, a fund like such as yours to back?
So that's a really complicated question.
I know.
Because I think Australia should worry completely. Is it competitive as it should be? Australia, we should all get... Why is it that we get so excited about winning in swimming but we don't really care about economics?
Couldn't agree more.
Right?
We'd have a Royal Commission
exactly.
right now into our performance.
So we'd all be ripping ourselves apart, right?
If we were
no good at the Olympics or swimming, 90% of Australians say they are proud of what we do in sport.
It's why the per capita, wealth of Australians has gone backwards for almost the past 3 years.
But everything you want to do needs to be funded by making some money. Right?
Yeah, sure.
So I think if your question is, should the Prime Minister be worried? Of course he should be worried, and I thought it sounded like he was, right? Which is, we should say, why would we want to be the 15th or the 16th or the 17th of anything, right? Why wouldn't we want to be great at it? Super, fourth largest pool, going to be the second largest pool. We're great at mining, we're great at banking, we're great at super, and we're good at swimming.
Right, we haven't historically been very good at athletics. Let's leave that one aside. Can I just, at that point about the overseas investment, what it says to me is right now, one of the things that the Prime Minister battles is, I know this from all the interviews I do, Australia's largest companies, like AustralianSuper, are choosing to put their capital overseas, and in particular in America, where energy prices are much cheaper and it's a far more reliable source, where industrial relations is not such a battleground as it is here. For better or worse, it's a battleground. And the other thing is, and you saw it today with the one big bill that Donald Trump has passed through the House, taxes are cheaper. So the top rate of tax, just for anybody in America right now, 37%. In Australia, 47%. In Australia, it kicks in at $190,000. In America, if you're an individual, it kicks in at $620,000 US. Right? So my question to you is that you go to America because with your capital, with Orica Energy's capital, with BlueScope's capital, with Brickworks capital, with Woodside Energy's capital, they get a bigger bang for their buck, a better return for their investors in America than they do in Australia. Well, that's why you've set up this office in New York.
Yeah, we've got 60 great people in New York.
60 people.
Yeah, but let me just try and tackle a couple of things you said there. We also invest $90 billion in Australia.
Sure.
And we participated in $6 billion worth of capital raisings over the last little while and a range of IPOs. So to us, it's more about a globally diversified portfolio, so you're in various markets. But what the Americans are great at, that we're not yet as good at, is they're great at turning savings into investable things that makes money. That's what they're great at. So just to put that, I found this number just staggering, but then I'm quite a nerdy type of person, right? But if you had $100 in 1920, $100, this is all adjusted for currency and inflation. If you had $100 US dollars and you invested in European stock market in 1920, right, $100, that's now worth $19,234. Right, that's a lot. Adjusted for inflation, $100 becomes nearly $20,000. The exact same $100 for the exact same period, 1920 in the US, what do you reckon? 104,587. Right? That's how good they are at it. So if you're an Australian super member, whether you're Tatiana or whether you're Percy, and you say US equities are going to make 7 and a bit, and European equities are going to make 5 and a bit, what am I going to do? Risk adjusted, where am I going to go? We're going to go there. Australia's got some advantages, franking credits and other things, local knowledge and other things. But it's very important that we build a completely diversified portfolio, listed and unlisted assets, in a range of geographies. But to be really direct about it, other than treasuries, we do not invest in countries. We invest in companies. And some of the greatest companies are in the US. And we've got some great companies in Australia, but should we have more? Yes. Could this even be a place where we use the capital formation in super to create companies?
But we'd have to be competitive to do that.
Of course you've got to be competitive. That's like a hygiene, simple factor, right? That's one thing you absolutely have to do. And we should get our energies together and say, how can we be winners? How can we build a bigger pie? How can we slice the pie up better? How can we work out, how do we get more simple at everything? Like, if you run a national business in Australia at the moment, you have about 100 different taxes you have to pay. Right? How stupid is that?
Really stupid.
So why don't we fix that? Right? If we talked just before in that session, just before about the take-up of technology, most companies are pretty good at taking up technology, big companies, but small and medium-sized companies struggle with it a big time. How could we help small and medium-sized enterprises, which employ so many people, to make the most of technology and become much more productive? How could we change the tax system to favour productive capital and investing in things that make money rather than where it is at the moment?
But the private sector's got to do this. The industry super funds have got to do this. The question is whether you are...
Sky's got to do it. Australians got to... Like, everyone's got to go, why don't we just go from there to something that's quite a bit better?
Because Australia's economy, as you know, is right now not growing. We are literally a tick off being in a recession, right? So the fact of the matter is, well, the one thing that would solve many of the economic woes that Australia has got, many of the budget pressures that the government's got, would be if Australia's economy stopped growing at 1% or less and started growing at 3 to 3.5%. It's not a big ask, that's its long-term average.
Yeah, growth is a fantastic way out of just about every problem.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's true, including childhood. So
that's true too.
I want to take you to another aspect of this, because that whole overseas investment thing, Australia has also got to be incredibly careful about what it backs and what it doesn't back. And your fund managers totally are going across the books of companies the whole time, making those assessments. But you can't, for example, invest in Australia in GRU chips as one great example. The new chips that will drive artificial intelligence, that will stimulate a whole new era of growth.
Yeah, well,
but you can't do that in Australia.
Well, I listened to the Prime Minister talk about a more diverse economy. I think that's a great ambition and aspiration, but I think we should be diverse around the things we're already starting to be good at. So just to put that in context, the Magnificent Seven, the big tech companies, represent 34.1% of the US S&P 500. It's incredible concentration, maybe an incredible concentration risk, but those machines aren't going to be easily replicated here. However, we have tripled the number of AI patents that have been pursued in Australia. Tripled it. We've doubled the workforce, but we're still 0.18% of global patents in that tech world. Right? So the idea of energising science and tech and diversifying is really important. But as an investor on behalf of Percy or Tatiana or any of the people in this room, we can't just say, oh, we're just going to wait until the tech sector emerges in Australia. We've got to have exposure to that. We've got to encourage small and medium-sized enterprises. We have to have sleeves of venture capital. But we also have to make money every single day in every daily crediting rate for all of those people. So where's that tech? The tech's in the States.
So because you're such big investors in Australian companies, you also have influence over their behaviour.
Sure.
The biggest ASX companies, and you exercise that in the way in which you vote in terms of corporate and social responsibility. Now, what I want to ask you about that is a lot of companies now are choosing not to be on the stock exchange. In fact, many say that the stock exchange may well be dying as we speak right now.
Gee, that's overstated.
It's tough, I know that. But you also are a very big investor in private equity, where businesses are allowed to be more patiently managed, where they don't have necessarily the same corporate and social responsibilities as publicly listed companies do. How does that sit with an organisation such as yours?
Well, first of all, don't forget we got belted for keeping Origin public.
Yes.
Right? So that was a situation where we were offered money for a public company which was way lower than our valuation, and we said that's the wrong valuation, we're not selling. Right? Yes. And that was very controversial. I just remind those people to look at the price today.
That would have been a loss
every week since.
That would have been a loss to Australians.
It would have, So, but I think you're overstating the change in the number of securities that are publicly listed. But we think it's really important to have a combination of public and private assets. There's a place for both, and sometimes you buy private assets and public assets and make them private, and sometimes you take private assets and make them public, as we've seen recently. That's all part of a healthy and robust, diverse financial services system. it's really important that nobody has any religion about these things, right? Anybody who says, oh, it's all private assets or it's only ever listed asset, that doesn't make any sense at all. What it all is about generating free cash flow, right? Will this business, does it have a market share? Will it be able to maintain its margins? Will it be able to generate free cash flow? Because I want to take some of that and give it to Percy and give it to Tatiana.
Sure. But then when it comes to corporate and social responsibility, behaviour is important.
Sure.
And you exercise that. Yeah. But it means, as Australia's largest investor, your own personal responsibility, your own corporate and social responsibility has to be impeccable as well.
Yeah.
And you're right now under some investigations, your sector, by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission. So this is something all of your people, as you become much larger organisations, have got to be highly conscious of.
Oh, absolutely. I think complacency or hubris or a failure to continuously improve or listen carefully, they're all disasters. Every successful organisation, every successful society has destroyed itself for that. So just because super is super for individuals, and it is an incredible opportunity to build a funding base for business, and it does fund Australia as we age. They're all great things. Super is super, but it's not universally super. It's not perfectly super. And there's a lot of things that we're putting our mind to get much better at. And no person in a glass house should throw a stone. That's no good at all. What we find with the businesses that we're dealing with is we're interested with them in creating long-term value. All the companies we're invested in like us being on their register because we're interested in the very long term.
So I want to ask you just a final one, really. I reckon this will take up our last time. And that is, when the government came up with this idea to tax... When the federal government came up with this idea to tax unrealised capital gains in super funds, largely self-managed super funds with more than $3 million in it, was that your idea?
Oh, no. No, definitely not.
It feels like an industry super fund idea because it'll drive people out of self-managed super funds back into your fund.
No, it's really, really... I think you're operating on a complete misunderstanding.
Right.
It is in the superannuation system's best interest for there to be confidence and a universality of support for the system. It's also really important that there's multiple ways that people can do their super. The SMSF sector makes about a quarter. It's really important that that's robust and supported and energised. As it is the industry fund sector, we have equal representation. As it is the privately owned, right? So the idea, this is a sector of choice and competition. I definitely want sector neutrality, and I want, just what I just said, Australia needs to be competitive and interested in being miles better than it is. So does Australian super, so does the super sector. So, no, we would never do anything, absolutely never do anything to try and make it harder for somebody else who's trying to make good super.
So is taxing unrealised capital gains for those people with more than $3 million in their super fund, is that good policy or not good policy?
Oh, I think you should ask the politicians what's good policy.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll ask you, is it a good idea or not?
I think it's really important that there's deep confidence in the super system, and I prefer less changes than more changes.
Okay, so the other thing about it, though, is I mentioned at the very beginning, in your core fund, your return over the past 10 years is 8% after tax. You actually value your investments on an annual basis to give an after-tax return, don't you?
We value much more regularly than annually.
Right.
Yeah. So
but your private equity, your infrastructure, all those things.
Much more often than annually, and we have to strike a daily crediting rate based on the freshest valuations.
Sure. So what I'm saying is, you're kind of doing what the government or the treasurer would be asking a self-managed superannuation fund to do in some ways, because you technically, once you get your returns, are taxed on those returns.
So what we're trying to do is make members as much risk-adjusted post-tax, post-fees money as we can every single day, and that includes realised and unrealised gains.
Sure. So therefore, what's being imposed there on unrealised gains, even though people are, rallying against it, is something that you are sort of already doing.
I think you might be asking me to say something publicly that I don't have any interest in speaking about.
That's what I sort of figured. just a final one. Just very final one. Should Percy in the future be forced to take all of his superannuation, or Tatiana, her superannuation, as an income stream?
Absolutely not. Completely not. Super is a financial asset that's been built by the person. Now, the deal between the country and the person is we will ask you to preserve your money, which is great, compound interest, and in return, we'll give you some tax benefits. That's the fundamental rule here. But the person, Percy, Tatiana, you earned it, you made your decision, it's your financial asset. Now, is generating an income in conjunction with the age pension a really good, intelligent financial plan? Absolutely. Should the government ever tell you what to do with your money? Never.
Paul Schroeder from Australian Super, great to chat to you.
Terrific. Thanks. Thanks, Ross. See you, mate.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Paul. And what a great note to end on. The government should never tell you what to do with your money. And with that note, have a great weekend, everyone. This was Australia's Economic Outlook for this year, 2025. I want to thank Paul and Michelle once again, Sky News, The Australian, for putting this on. It is one of the best parts of the year. It's my pleasure to be here. Enjoy your weekend. See you next year.